Titanic meant something very different depending on who you were. For some, it was a floating palace. For others, it was a one-way ticket to a new life in America. But how much did it cost? What did you actually get for your money? And how did life on board change from one class to another? Her sister ship, the RMS Olympic, offered similar prices and comforts. These ships were not just transportation. They were small, carefully divided societies at sea. Let's walk through it, class by class. Third class, hope and hard savings. Ticket price in 1912 ranged from £3 to £8, about $15 to $40 at the time, roughly $450 to $1,200 today. For many immigrants, even that was a serious sacrifice. An unskilled laborer might earn around $500 a year. One ticket could equal 1 or 2 months of wages. A family of 4 could spend half a year's income just to cross the Atlantic. Some saved for years. Others borrowed from relatives already in America. Third class on the RMS Titanic was basic but, for its time, surprisingly decent. Cabins were small and shared, usually 2 to 4 bunks. Single men and women were separated unless traveling as families. There were shared washrooms and general rooms where people gathered. Life on board had its own rhythm. Passengers played cards and checkers, sang folk songs from Ireland or Scandinavia, and sometimes danced to a fiddle or accordion. Children ran along the deck, enjoying the open air. Many were leaving everything behind, so friendships formed quickly. Meals were included in the ticket price and served several times a day. The food was simple and filling, often more regular and plentiful than what some passengers were used to at home. Class divisions, however, were strict. Third-class passengers were not allowed into first or second class areas. Gates separated sections of the ship. They were not intended to deny access to lifeboats, but location mattered. Third-class cabins were on lower decks, which meant longer routes and more confusion during the evacuation. Language barriers added to the chaos. The survival figures show the difference. Around 61% of first-class passengers survived. In third class, only about 24% did. Women and children were prioritized overall, but proximity and access made a real impact. In 1912, second class on the RMS Titanic occupied the middle ground between struggle and luxury. It was designed for teachers, businessmen, clergy, skilled workers, and their families. Respectable people with ambition, but not vast wealth. A second-class ticket usually cost £12 to £20, about $60 to $100 in 1912. In today's terms, that's roughly $1,800 to $3,000. For that money in 1912, you could buy a good second-hand horse, several months' rent on a decent house, or enough furniture to fully furnish a room. It was a serious expense, but achievable for the middle class. Life on board felt comfortable and orderly. Mornings began with breakfast in their own dining saloon, followed by walks along the enclosed promenade on B or C deck. Afternoons were spent in the library with novels or newspapers, playing deck games like quoits, or talking in the smoking room. Piano music often drifted through the public spaces. Evenings meant dinner, card games, and quiet conversation. It wasn't grand, but it was pleasant. They absolutely felt the separation from first class. The ship was carefully divided. Different staircases, different dining rooms, different lounges. Gates and crew enforced those boundaries. Interaction between classes was rare. Did first class look down on them? In many cases, yes. Edwardian society was deeply aware of status. First class valued exclusivity, and social lines were not meant to blur. That said, second-class passengers were still considered respectable. They were not treated like steerage. Many were educated and upwardly mobile, people on their way to better opportunities. In survival terms, second class fell between the extremes. About 42% survived, higher than third class but lower than first. They were closer to the lifeboats than those below, but they did not have the same immediate access as those above. Second class on Titanic was about dignity and stability. Not luxury, not poverty, but a clear reminder of where you stood in the social order of 1912. First class on the RMS Titanic was designed to impress from the moment you stepped aboard. It wasn't just transportation. It was a statement of wealth and status. A basic first-class berth cost around £30 in 1912, about $150 at the time, roughly $4,500 today. At the top end were the famous parlour suites, which could cost up to £870, about $4,350 in 1912. In today's terms, that's around $133,000. For that price in 1912, you could buy a large house or several motorcars. The cheaper cabins were still comfortable, often with shared bathroom facilities. The most expensive suites felt like private apartments at sea, with multiple rooms, sitting areas, private promenades, and bathrooms with hot and cold running water. Bed sheets were changed daily. Perfumed soaps were provided. Stewards and maids unpacked luggage, pressed clothing, and attended to almost every need. Daily life was built around leisure. Mornings might begin with breakfast, followed by a stroll along the promenade deck. Afternoons could include reading in the lounge, writing letters, or visiting the gymnasium, which featured rowing machines and even a mechanical camel. There was a heated saltwater swimming pool, Turkish baths with massage rooms, and a squash court. In the evening, passengers dressed formally for dinner while a live orchestra played in the dining saloon. Social status mattered. First class was carefully protected from the other classes. Separate entrances, staircases, and dining rooms maintained exclusivity. Many passengers were industrialists, financiers, or members of high society. Conversation often revolved around business, politics, and connections. Appearances were important. Clothing, manners, and who you associated with all signaled your place. When disaster struck, that position made a difference. First-class cabins were located on upper decks, closer to the lifeboats. About 61% of first-class passengers survived, significantly higher than in lower classes. First class on Titanic was more than comfort. It was privilege, visibility, and the confidence of people used to being at the top of the social order. So when we look at Titanic, we are not just looking at one ship. We are looking at three completely different worlds traveling side by side across the same ocean. In third class, there was sacrifice and hope. In second class, stability and ambition. In first class, privilege and power. Same voyage, same iceberg, very different experiences. If you had lived in 1912, which class would you have chosen and why? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into life on board the RMS Titanic, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more stories from history. I'll see you in the next one.